Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending on if you are watching live or the recording. I'm Lindsay Light, a Business Advisory Manager at Kreston Reeves and a member of our growth team. At Kreston Reeves, we are known for guiding our clients, colleagues and communities to a brighter future. We understand the world is forever evolving and we want to help all generations embrace this change. Our passion for continued improvement ensures we understand your goals, we will support you on your journey and we will help you to realise your potential. Today, we have our 5th Looking Ahead webinar, Looking Ahead to a Future with Purpose. Today, we'll be looking at the importance of purpose, sustainability and corporate social responsibility. We have some great speakers to cover the topics. We have Mark Attwood, Jake Standing and James Peach from Kreston Reeves. Plus, we are joined by James Palmer from Global Associates, here to explain how Global have been through the process. So speakers, please introduce yourself. Mark.
Hello everybody, my name is Mark Attwood. I am a Business Advisory Partner here at Kreston Reeves and I'm speaking to you today about purpose.
Thank you, Mark. Jake?
Good morning everyone, my name's Jake Standing and I help entrepreneurial business owners grow sustainably.
Thank you. James Peach?
Good morning everyone, I am an Audit and Advisory Partner based in the Horsham office of Kreston Reeves. I also head up the firm's CSR programme with the help of many reps across the firm and the offices who do some magnificent work for the firm and help drive the CSR programme.
Thank you. And James Palmer.
Good morning everyone, it's James Palmer. I'm the National Head of Sales and IoT, which stands for Internet of Things at Global Associates. I head up our new IoT division, which is called Global Spaces. I'll talk to you a bit about that later. I've spent the last 25 years making buildings nicer places to work, more sustainable and more productive for their staff.
Lovely, thank you all. So the webinar will be recorded and you'll be sent the recording with a link to a short survey later today. Please feel free to use the question facility that we have in the panel at the side of the screen and I'll be asking your questions anonymously to our panellists after we've heard from them all today. So first up we have Mark discussing the importance of purpose and reviewing your business's purpose. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Lindsay. The importance of purpose within our business has been a hot topic being discussed quite widely in the press. But actually, even if you've found your purpose, should actually we be reviewing it in a post-COVID world? As most of you will have guessed, I trained as an accountant, which means that we tend to lean towards logic and numbers. So when I started to hear in the press about both corporate and personal purpose, I wondered how this actually fit into business. I have, during my time of advising businesses, assisted them with mission and vision statements, but my thoughts were, where did purpose actually fit in? Putting my expectations aside, the more I read, the more I come to understand that purpose was a statement of emotion and aspiration to explain the overall ambition of a business or an individual. So coming back to the importance of purpose, I believe the first thing to do is just to clarify the difference between the 3 statements I've mentioned. So starting off with purpose. Purpose actually guides you. Your purpose statement states why you do what you do, why your organisation exists, and basically what your company is passionate about. Your vision statement is where you aspire to be. Your vision statement describes the future position of the company. It therefore answers the question, where do I aim to be? The mission statement drives your business. Your mission statement focuses on the more practical and operational side of the business. It therefore answers, what do we do and what makes us different? Purpose, therefore, is why the company exists. And due to the passion associated with this reason, it should in theory last for hundreds of years. That's assuming you get it right first time. Whereas a mission or a vision statement may change multiple times as you pursue your purpose. Your purpose, therefore, is the higher reasoning for the company's existence. This drives the innovation and inspires change. Having thought about this, and I then reflected on actually what I'd read in the press and discussed with my clients, and actually how purpose applies to a typical SME and also the hardworking entrepreneur that's driving that entity forward. My thoughts ended up reaching the conclusion that the original drive for setting up the business had to have come from somewhere, and as such, there must be a good reason for purpose to apply in the SME space. I will cover an example later on to explain this, but what I've seen in my client base is that getting it right can push a business forward in a variety of ways. It is important to remember, and something which is actually a common mistake within considering purpose, it's not always about the environmental issues. What it is, however, about is the passion that's associated. There is no way to fake this passion, and as such, people, if you are faking it, will see straight through it. I always remember talking to one of my clients about what interested them within their logistics business. The answer I received was simple. He was interested in moving something from A to B in the most efficient way possible, and actually got a buzz from the improvements to that process. Although, unsurprisingly, this is not everyone's ideal purpose, it was his, and it was his reasoning for starting the business. And when you discussed that with him, the passion shone through. James Palmer, how does purpose affect your business on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, you made an interesting point about whether purpose should change post-COVID, because ours certainly have. So I mean, our original purpose, our purpose now is to save the planet one building at a time, which sounds like a very grand statement. It is a very grand statement. It needs to be a grand statement to be worth chasing, you know. And we accept that we can only have a limited effect on that. But with every building that we work in, the ultimate goal is to make that building more sustainable, and post-COVID, and this is where the purpose has changed subtly, a safer place to work. So when we get to our vision for Global Associates, for a vision for our company, is really that every building we've ever worked on is a safe place that's environmentally sustainable, and that the people that work in it are happy to be there. They feel comfortable, they feel safe, they know they're being looked after, that the people managing that building have a good corporate social responsibility story to tell about the environment they're providing for their staff, and that those staff feel, well, that building is, as I say, in line with our purpose, which is sustainable. We save the planet one building at a time. 40% of all CO2 emissions come from buildings, so that's a good number to chip into. And every time we knock that number down, you know, that there's a let's be honest, right? That's a steak you can eat without any guilt, right? That's a journey in a petrol car you can have. All of these things that we enjoy doing that are getting limited, that have to be limited for the future of the planet. Actually, there's some give and take in that, and we can enjoy some treats on the back of good effort elsewhere. And so that's where my passion comes from, really, is eating steak. No, I don't want to be too flippant about it, but I think you get the idea.
Yeah, definitely. As we heard from James there, his purpose is throughout his business, and one of the key things that I've seen is that actually once the passion is communicated in a simple way to your employees, and they understand why you're delivering a product or service in a particular style, if they're also engaged in delivering to the customer in that particular way, the process will become that little bit easier. Just focusing on this, I always remember being told by one of my bosses that a company is similar to pulling a cart. The more people you have pulling it, the easier it becomes. Therefore, by using purpose to assist in achieving better staff engagement, they all help pull the cart. However, I keep being asked a question around purpose and the commercial side. So coming back to the commercial element, every business, whether it be commercial business or a charity, has to make a profit or surplus to enable it to survive. And in turn, the owner and the employees have to receive remuneration to live. I've asked lots of my clients this question, and the answer I usually get back is very interesting. The question is, if the need to make money is therefore a given, and there are lots of ways in this world to make money, why did you particularly enter this market sector? The answer typically takes the client back to the first time when they started the business, and they re-engage with what can be described as that fire in the belly. What I'd like to do with that in mind is to talk you through an example of a real client of mine who shows how being purpose-led can change your business quite fundamentally. The entrepreneur in this case identified a need within the marketplace and thought that they could deliver a service in a better way. That's actually quite a common way most entrepreneurs start their business. They approached their first customer and explained the issues that they'd identified within the market. The potential customer agreed and their thoughts and actually signed up, ensuring that the ethos that they'd identified and therefore their reasoning for existing had been understood by all of the staff they took on to help deliver that service. Unsurprisingly, the customer was pleased with what was delivered. In this instance, it was the business owner's purpose was to change the way in which the service was delivered to the customer that started to drive the change within the market. When I actually sat down with him and started discussing where he wanted to be and where he was heading, it was quite clear that he didn't just want to change his little section of the market. He wanted to change the industry, because actually he fundamentally disagreed with how the service was being provided to the recipients. As time went on, he attracted more and more sales through using word of mouth, but understanding the issues the customer faced. Externally, he was vocal, being very, very vocal about his thoughts and therefore his purpose during any pitching meetings. The sales continued to build and the financial rewards followed. And this is the interesting part. Actually, the profits that were being generated weren't his main focus. It was to change the industry. Obviously, some thought had to go into the pricing and margins to be commercial and to survive, but the profits that were being generated were the byproduct of him delivering the service in his particular way and his particular style. And by this point, an ethos had been developed that everyone within the company believed in. The major step change came when a national brand approached them and asked them for a meeting. This approach was actually off the back of the business owner speaking about his message and thoughts into the public arena. Again, when he went along to this pitching meeting, his purpose was explained and he won that contract against significantly larger competition. My point here is that if the client had entered the room and said, I have a service and these are the benefits, he would have been exactly the same as everybody else who would have walked through the door on that particular day. What I've seen in the past is actually this is the type of sales training most people have received to date, as in this is the product, these are the benefits, and make sure the client understands that. Leading with purpose, the customer understood why he was in business, and actually in this instance his ethos aligned with theirs and their actual thoughts. What I'm saying is, well, what I'm not saying is that this will always win a sales pitch, but actually in terms of purpose, it does communicate across to the potential customer why you exist, and they can then better understand what they're signing up to. I now get on to why you may want to review your purpose, especially since lockdown. As mentioned, most business owners I've spoken to, actually when they consider why they started their business, can roughly state their reasoning. This is their purpose. However, there's been a huge change in society through various topics just recently, which will have affected how it thinks. As an example, we appear to be, as a population, coming to terms in part as to what COVID has done, but what it has shown is the importance that our health service has to the society. Covering another topic, it's only recently that we'll have seen David Attenborough on our telly talking about pollution within our seas, and it was only the other week I saw how he was saying extinction in certain animals affects the world and therefore affects individuals and also business. Both topics will have moved public opinion and therefore will have had an effect on business and some people's purposes in life. As I said, purpose does not have to be about saving the world, but with such a huge change in society occurring at the moment, an individual's thoughts can alter. With this change comes hardship in some sectors, but opportunities elsewhere. As entrepreneurs, we just have to see them. What I'd like to end on is a thought. Opportunity, along with passion and therefore a purpose, supported by the right team, I have seen that builds a successful, long-lasting business that drives impact. If you'd like any support in finding your purpose, then please do let us know. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to pass back to Lindsay.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. So if anyone was following our social media last week, you will have seen that Kreston Reeves have spent a lot of time ourselves defining our purpose and speaking to our people about their personal purposes. We can see the importance in being purpose-led in the post-digital era that we are now in. So if anyone has any questions on purpose, please do add them into the Q&A box, and I will be asking Mark a bit later. So next we're going to be looking at sustainability, and we have Jake here to help us with the common questions we get. But firstly, Jake, can I ask, what is your purpose?
Thanks, Lindsay. So my purpose is to guide people and organisations towards sustainable growth. And what I mean by that is allowing businesses and people to change the way they currently do things so that it is much more sustainable, whether that's to the environment, to society, or to our people or communities. And I think if you'd asked me that question, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago, then the answer would definitely have been different. And there's nothing to say that in a few years' time that answer would change again. I think a couple of years ago, my purpose probably was defined by the fact that Isabel, my 2-year-old daughter, was born, and it changed your perspective on life. And I think what Mark was saying earlier was, you know, COVID has changed a lot of people's perspectives on life, and it's a really good catalyst to change the way that we have been doing things.
Lovely, thank you, Jake. So getting started, we've heard sustainability very frequently over the past few months, but what does that mean? Yeah,
and Lindsay, thank you for allowing me to speak on this topic today. It's something that I'm really passionate about. But first up, very difficult question, because sustainability means different things to so many different people. And one of the definitions that I have heard is where sustainability is focusing on meeting the needs of the present whilst not compromising future generations to meet their needs in the future. And I think that's really powerful because, you know, a lot of us, we do think sometimes very short term, and we don't think about what is life going to be in 30, 40, 50 years time. And again, going back to Mark's point, we would have all seen the David Attenborough documentaries which highlight climate change and species extinction. Really the time to act is now. I guess one of the things from sustainability point of view is, how do you define any kind of goals from that perspective? And actually 5 years ago, 17 goals were signed up to by all UN member states, which you can see on the screen now. And these really act as a really nice framework for businesses and people to be able to work towards certain of these goals. And businesses and people won't be able to, or they may be able to try and strive to meet all 17 goals, but a much more sustainable way of approaching it is to select 3 or 4 goals that you that pertain particularly to yourself or your business, and try and think of ways that you can use your business to achieve those goals. And it's really in the way of thinking about other stakeholders rather than just shareholders or owners on the financial standpoint, but also every business has a footprint and an impact on a lot of different stakeholders. they should be thought about in any decision-making process.
Lovely, thank you. Taking one of the more obvious sustainability goals, going carbon neutral, isn't that going to be quite expensive for businesses to achieve?
Well, yes, absolutely, but we have to also think about what's the cost if we don't try to go carbon neutral. And when I say absolutely, it will cost a lot of money, that's with the status quo. There's two ways of going carbon neutral. One is being as is, and then buying some kind of carbon offsets like carbon credits or planting trees to offset those emissions. But a better way, and definitely the way where it's not expensive, is by reducing the level of emissions in the first place. And there's so many different ways that you can do that. But it goes back to a concept of lean process. So business owners often use lean process improvement to try and improve profits, cut out waste from their processes. But that waste also it means, from an environmental point of view, if you're not sending out a load of waste to landfill, for example, you're not using energy in buildings, as James Palmer alluded to earlier, then that means that actually you're not paying for that energy either, and therefore you are reducing costs. So the cost of doing nothing is much higher than the cost of becoming carbon neutral. And actually, it's quite interesting. There's a lot of companies that have committed to being carbon neutral, carbon negative. So, for example, there's been a lot of I don't know, from the BrewDog perspective, they've purchased a load of land that they're going to build trees on, and they're actually educating people on their app how they can reduce their carbon footprint. So that's really good. And obviously the big tech companies like Microsoft and Amazon have also committed to be carbon neutral by 2030, 2040. And obviously there's a question around, is that actually quick enough? But two points that have been very recent in the news is around aerospace. So Airbus releasing proof of concept, or not proof of concept, but a concept for a zero emission plane using hydrogen as the fuel there. So that's really exciting. But something that I read yesterday was, and obviously probably a bit politically motivated, is that China have said that they strive to be carbon neutral by 2060, which is way out there, but they're actually committing to doing something, which is something we haven't really seen from the world's largest emitter of carbon. So there's a lot of things there. In terms of where businesses and people can go to get some more resource on how they might go about becoming carbon neutral, measuring their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, etc. We've actually become a member of Clean Growth UK, which is a fantastic organisation that runs a lot of innovative workshops with their members, and they have a whole range of resource that is available by being a member, which is free. So I would strongly recommend going onto the Clean Growth UK website, becoming a member and checking out the resource there. And obviously it's something that we embed in everything that we do at Kreston Reeves as well. So I hope that answered the question, Lindsay.
That's very interesting. So what do you think the greatest challenges are for businesses to be able to actually make an impact when it comes to being sustainable?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge to making that impact is twofold, really. One is around funding. So sometimes it does take a bit of investment to either innovate a new product or service which allows the industry to become more carbon efficient or go carbon neutral. But there's a lot of different grants out there, from Innovate UK to Locase and various of the LEPs that are driving this sustainability. But also investment funds and investors are becoming much more involved with the ESG, so the environmental, social and governance sides of investing. And this is not something new. This is something that has been around for a number of years, but only we're seeing this really accelerate now. I'll probably do it a bit of a disservice, and my financial planning colleagues will probably be putting their heads in their hands if I went into any further detail. But You know, it is going in the right direction. But the main point for me, and this goes back to Mark's piece around purpose, is actually defining or changing a mindset so that you put those stakeholders in line with other shareholders and owners, and that takes time. But we have a huge catalyst with COVID to be able to change that much quicker than we could have previously. So I think mindset is the piece that I would be focusing on the most. And for business owners and entrepreneurs, going back to what Mark said about finding your purpose, actually exploring that and defining it is really important. And then living and breathing that means that you get into that mindset much more. And of course, just one last thing to wrap up, Lindsay. There's obviously many other benefits to businesses to becoming carbon neutral or having a purpose. I know that James Peach is going to discuss that in a bit more detail around what the benefits are. But a lot more people are wanting that more from businesses, and those people are going to become leaders in the future as well.
Thanks, Jake. It's obviously a large area to be considered by most businesses at the minute. James Palmer, bringing this back to global, how have you seen COVID have an effect on your business and your purpose and how you do things?
Yeah, it's made us look for new technologies. Actually, Jake, could you bring up the second slide, the one with the sensors on it, please? The next one, yeah. That's the one. Thanks. Yeah, so there are a lot of technology that we had been using for a long time to enable us to save energy in buildings is now enabling us to make those buildings safer. So it's being repurposed. Things are getting used in a slightly different way. So there's a virtuous circle that's come out of this almost. So we've got some tech here for people counting, a radar that you put across a door. Typically used in shops so that they can measure how many people are coming in and out. We repurpose that so that we can work out the number of desks in an area, the number of people that have walked into that space, and literally have a red light, green light, traffic lights over the door to say whether it's safe or not to be in that space, because we can understand how big it is, how many people are in there, and then we understand what the social distancing is like. But then moving on from that, we now know how many people are in that space. If that's a mechanically vented or heated or cooled space, which most are in office blocks, we can schedule ramp up and down the fans to ventilate the space to make sure that there's enough fresh air going into that space to make it a safer environment, but also making sure that we're not pumping fresh air and heating and cooling empty areas. So we're saving energy elsewhere in the building whilst making sure that densely populated spaces are safer. So we've, these little sticks here, you can put on your desk, and it tells us if anyone's sat at the desk. So you can create a map, a CSR screen in reception that tells people where safe desks are to go and sit at. You can also give people an indication of what temperature that desk is. So the airspace around this desk is 24 degrees, and that one's nearer 21 degrees, and people might choose where to sit based on where they're going to be more productive. I would prefer 21 degrees. Someone else would definitely prefer 24. So you get productivity coming out of this as well. So you get well-being information. We can then start understanding where people want to sit, where they're most productive. We can understand what areas of the building are safe, which areas of the building need fresh air, which need heating, which need light. Coming back to purpose, I suppose really it occurred to me, actually, it only really occurred to me during this conversation this morning that my original frustration for years at seeing office blocks lit at night on empty floors and seeing buildings that were being heated, cooled and ventilated and lit when they were completely empty, I found it really frustrating. And for a long time in my early part of my career, people didn't care enough, because David Attenborough wasn't doing the good work he's doing now, because the message wasn't out there about climate change to a strong enough degree, and governments weren't taking it seriously enough. So fuel was too cheap. Fuel was too cheap for people to really care about it, frankly. And once the price of fuel goes up more and more, which it will, the financial burden on businesses will make the argument very simple. I think one of the comments earlier about is it expensive to be environmentally sustainable? Is it expensive to be sustainable? well, that's a cost to business. It's not. It shouldn't be expensive to be environmentally sustainable. In fact, quite the opposite. It really should show you a good saving if you're doing it properly.
Yeah, that was really interesting, actually, that point, James, because as I mentioned during my discussion, actually, you identified a need. So your purpose there was to reduce and improve buildings, actually identifying needs and identified opportunities. So you've identified there, and through your personal frustrations of seeing buildings lit up at night and knowing that it's burning various energy and also heat. And when we go back to Jake's point around, does it cost more? Well, actually, if we can monitor our buildings in a better way and reduce the energy consumption, it reduces our cost. So even though some of the capital outlay up front is there, actually in the longer term, it should save cost and, in theory, energy.
Lovely,
Absolutely.
thank you. Jake, do you have anything just to wrap up on that point?
Yeah, I think really it's about business owners taking some kind of action rather than doing nothing and just it will figure itself out. We've got obviously the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Clean Growth UK platform as well for people to go and have a look at following this webinar.
Great, thank you. So finally, we have James Peach discussing corporate social responsibility. James, could you tell us what your personal purpose is, please?
Yes, hello again, everyone. My purpose is to empower colleagues to make a difference and also help guide businesses to a much brighter future. So ultimately, it's quite simple, and I think it's probably a common theme throughout my CSR presentation to you now, that I think there is a tendency sometimes to overcomplicate things. And I think you can have the greatest impact by keeping things simple. And I'll go on now to talk about how CSR over the years has become very muddled with some people. Times have changed, it has evolved quite a lot. And certainly the last 5 years it's become paramount in any business, not just the large multinationals, but even startups, small businesses. They can have much more impact, kudos they can gain from having a very good CSR program. I say if I go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, CSR was relatively new. It was really embraced by larger multinational businesses, but some did it very well. Some probably didn't do it as well, and they did it for the wrong reasons. I'm not going to try and define CSR, but I think if you strip it back, it's all about giving something back, whether it's giving back something to colleagues, to communities, to contacts, customers. And it's a good way to evidence, the impact you have on the environment and your social responsibilities. But I'll also go on to talk about some of the benefits you may get as an organisation from your CSR activities. And I don't know if you can bring the slide up. There's a few points I'm going to go through here. Obviously, I don't think the be all and end all is focusing on CSR to have the benefit for yourself. But if you do it well, it's inevitable that there will actually be plus points for your business organisation as well. So firstly, I just wanted to talk about employees and how important they can be as part of your CSR program. We've certainly seen that within Kreston Reeves. And I think a lot of this is down to the millennial generation. I'm going to give you a few stats. I think one of them, I'm a bit unsure whether it's that accurate, but it's often been said that by the year 2025, 3/4 of the world's workforce will be made up of millennials. It seems a bit high, but I think it's probably no doubt that it's going to be more than 50%. But the other stat linked to that, which is obviously linked to CSR as well, is that it's suggested that 2/3 of millennials are not willing to take a job with an employer that hasn't got strong social responsibility programs. And it's becoming more common now that the millennial generation are taking on the more senior roles in businesses to take it forward. So it really is time to embrace CSR and obviously engage with your employees, make sure you get them on side. Because a loyal employee can, have great impact on the business around you. Not only will it help with recruitment, a lot of people are more likely to take a job because they can see that as an employer you do a lot in the world of CSR, but also it can help keep your top talent. Your retention is generally very good. People like what you do as a firm, so that will help continue grow your workforce, and hopefully, ideally, grow the top line of the business. I think one of the other important parts about employee engagement is trying to empower your colleagues. It's back to my purpose again. We've certainly seen it within Kreston Reeves, where we've empowered staff, we've encouraged them to be part of the CSR programme, to come up with ideas. We've had all sorts of ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good, but we're always willing to listen to them and sort of take on board any comments. A very good example, at the start of lockdown, someone came up with the idea, or they noticed that it was good to perhaps support the frontline NHS staff. And this time, instead of perhaps trying to raise funds and pay monies towards NHS foundations, instead we thought, what do the frontline staff need? So we set up Amazon wish lists to find out, what they need, and it's things such as energy bars, hand moisturizer, all those important things they need because they're not getting any sleep. And then we set it up, rolled it out internally within Kreston Reeves, and within the space of a few weeks, we provided over £2,000 worth of goods to the frontline staff. And it was important that we could show we gave something back. And at the same time, employees, when they all get together, when they see a regime or an initiative like that, and they want to help support it. So again, it's strength in numbers. And I say a loyal employee should hopefully work wonders for the business. The second bullet point on the slide there talks about improved employee benefits. Some of those are perhaps some of the more obvious ones where an employer may allow an employee to take, say, a day's paid leave to go and do volunteer roles. Separate from that, there may be that an employer will apply matched funding if employees want to go off and raise money for certain charities. But I think one of the greatest employee benefits of CSR is perhaps the intangible benefit that employees get in enhancing and developing their skill sets. Basically, we've got a lot of employees across Kreston Reeves that take on volunteer roles regardless of any encouragement from us. And for years, they've been trustees of charities, they've been governors of schools. And I think a lot of them have always said it's quite useful to supplement their professional skills by seeing hands-on what charities do. So again, that's a very strong benefit we see that employees get from CSR. If I move on to the next point, it's really about improving your customer, your contacts, and your community engagement. It's very similar to the employee point above. The more you shout about it from the rooftops, the more impact you can potentially have. But I think it's important that you can show and demonstrate that you've got strong social morals, rather than focusing on your margins, your profits. If you can show that you're interested in other areas, whether that's social, environmental, or other areas, then you're more likely to get more buy-in from your clients, and you'll end up with clients with similar values to yourself. Moving on to the next point, I think if you cover all those first 3 bullet points via very good CSR, it's inevitable that your business image and your awareness will grow even more. Hopefully, you don't need to put much effort into to grow that if you've done everything well beforehand. It's obviously important to have a good social media presence and also have a good, strong marketing team to help demonstrate what you do as a firm. But once you've got that strong image and awareness, you've then got that ability to stand out in a crowd. And again, within Kreston Reeves, we've had experiences in the past where prospects or clients, we've talked to them about what advice we can provide them from a tax perspective, financial planning. But a lot of the time, they're more interested in seeing that perhaps, we've gone down this route of purpose, for example, where we're going to focus on other areas of a business, or whether we're going to be looking at climate change. And actually that sort of stuff might resonate more with a client than actually providing the standard accountancy and taxation advice. The 5th bullet point is not really about benefits you get as a business from successful CSR. It's really inevitable, and this is the easiest bullet point to achieve. Basically, if you undertake CSR activities, you're going to have to get it wrong quite substantially to not have an impact on the local environment in the locality. And ideally, it wouldn't just happen in the locality. You can get more of a national presence if you do things well. And link back to the point before about image and awareness. If it's that strong, you really can have greater impacts, and maybe even worldwide if necessary. And the final point, once again, going back to CSR, if you do it well, it can actually have an improved impact on the financial performance of the business. Now, I fully appreciate, we talked about it before, that if you want to invest in carbon renewable programs or to offset your carbon footprint, there may be a cost associated with it. But at the same time, linked to James Palmer's business, if you want to look at your energy output in your offices, once again at Kreston Reeves, we have lots of offices, we can improve ways in monitoring that and try and cut down our overall cost on an annual basis on heat and lights. Other businesses, it could be more direct and straightforward. For example, a manufacturer that produces packaging for products, they may be able to find ways of reducing packaging. As a result, that reduces their overall costs and they can sell products at a more reasonable price margin. And there are more indirect benefits of CSR and the impact it has on your financial performance. For example, going back to my point about employee engagements, if retention is good, then you may cut out on future recruitment fees and costs associated with that. But I think the gold star in terms of improving financial performance, and is linked to that really strong business image and awareness, is that instead of actually looking at costs, you can actually grow your top line. And by having that really strong brand, you can get more customers in. Customers are more willing to refer work to you, and that's really the gold star, as I say, of showing how you've done something really well. So really, although CSR is all about giving something back, hopefully business owners and people involved in business can see that it can actually have a positive impact on your business as well. So I was intrigued to get any comments or thoughts from James Palmer in terms of his business, not necessarily from a CSR perspective, but because obviously you are offering a CSR type service, whether any of those particular points resonate more with you?
Yeah, massively. Actually, Jake, if you can pull the other slide up, there's a few points on there that that are quite relevant, really. I suppose from a slightly more mercenary angle, if I'm honest. So yeah, attracting the best staff, retaining the best staff, and getting the most from your staff means providing the best environment to work for them to work in. So there's a in terms of the cost to your business of CSR. Well, actually, no, your benefit is phenomenal. The reason that companies like Google and Microsoft invest so much in the working environments that they create for their staff is actually to keep their staff in the office, to keep them there working. That's the the really brutal side of the truth of a lot of what they're doing. I put British Brighton and Hove Football Club down there. A friend of mine worked for the Albion for several years, and right up until they were in the Championship, just before they made it up into the Premiership, and they invested massively in the environment, from providing the best possible training facilities and building all new training facilities to the environmental impact of almost everything they did, down to the way the staff were treated, and time off to do charity, and all of everything you've just talked about was as important as the players they bought and the games they played as part of their route to the Premiership. And it was a massive plan they put in place. And really, and it came down to, my friend Matt, who worked there, said it was quite mercenary too. Really, it was quite a brutal thing. They wanted to be able to turn around to every player and say they could have no complaints about anything that the management structure was doing. So the only thing at fault if they didn't play well was them, right? So have we done everything we can do as a business to provide the environment for that player to play the best game of football? And if they didn't go out and play the best game of football, they could, with hand on heart and all honesty, say, you need to look at what you're doing here and actually hold that person to account, knowing that they've done everything they could, which I thought was a fantastic story, and the success, it worked. They're in the Premiership, so that was the plan, and it got them to where they needed to be. So that's a really quite very business focused, very, very hard-nosed way of looking at CSR, but with a very tangible and real outcome for the club. So yeah, it's really quite interesting. That the other point you came on to about providing more environmentally friendly places to work, and the story that tells is I was working with Exeter University and chatting to their head of estates there, and basically they had been given a phenomenal cash budget for capital expenditure to improve their environmental story, because you were talking about millennials and how much of a percentage of the workforce that's going to be in the next few years. And of course, the millennials were coming through the university at the time I was having this conversation with him, and saying that they will not get people coming to their university unless they can tell a good environmental story, because that's one of the key buying factors from their customers, from students. And that went, so their level of standards that they had meant that next year, if I turned up at Exeter University for a meeting in a diesel car, I wouldn't be allowed on site, right? That's how far they'd taken it. So I either had to get the train or be in an electric car to go to a meeting to provide them with any services. That's how far they were taking it, to be able to tell that story, that CSR story. And that was, you know, had huge financial backing from the business as a whole. And obviously the benefit is to them that students want to go there because they know that they're going somewhere that is sustainable. So that's that whole loop, isn't it? You create a good environment for people to perform in, you create a safe environment for people to be in, so they want to be there, and you give them, and you help the planet, which saves you money. So it is a completely virtuous circle, this whole thing. Yeah, that's really where we are. So we fit into different aspects of that, not the complete picture obviously, but the certain aspects of that we can really help with. So it's I see this whole thing as a great opportunity, you know, for customers and suppliers.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our speakers. We've heard quite a lot of important points over the last 40 minutes. So to summarise, we have a top 5 takeaways which will be shared after the webinar. So find your purpose. As we're now in the WHO era, people buy into your purpose more than ever before. Focus on your purpose. How can you embed this into every area of your business? Explore which UN sustainable goals your business may wish to support. You can then build your business around this. Don't underestimate the importance of CSR. Even the smallest change can make a huge difference. And CSR goes beyond being able to just tell a good story. It can empower and engage your staff, which leads to customer satisfaction. So as we are nearing the end of the webinar, I'll be providing details of our next webinar series in a moment. But first, I'd like to open up the questions to our panel. So we've had a number of questions in already. If there are any others, then please enter them into the Q&A box in the side panel on your screens. So firstly, we have, in a business context, would it be fair to think of vision as what an organisation is aiming towards, mission as how this will be achieved, and purpose as why we are driven to do it? Mark, I think that's one for you to start on.
That is absolutely spot on. So I'm really pleased that someone was listening there. Yeah, generally what we saw over time, as I said, I've helped businesses with their vision and mission statements. Mission is the practical side, the vision is the aim, and the purpose is, as they rightly said, why they exist. We're currently going through this as a firm, and it's an interesting journey to start putting together the pieces.
Any other comments from anyone else on that area? I know purpose sort of came into every single area. Oh, Jake?
Yeah, I was going to say I've spoken about the difference between purpose and mission with some of my clients and contacts actually, and sometimes you get the feedback that isn't it the same, but putting it in the perspective of the vision is what, your mission is how, and the purpose is why. Regardless of what you call it, what, how, and why is the best way of putting it, I think. So yeah.
So Jake, another one for you. Sustainability on a large scale, with leaders of the US, Brazil, China, Turkey, and maybe others closer to home being so deaf to climate issues, it seems quite hopeless that change on a large enough scale will happen. In the absence of governments leading effectively, don't we need massive corporations to lead? Is there any hope there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question and very timely from the point of view of what I said earlier about the Chinese government saying that they want to become carbon neutral. Now, everyone will have their different opinions on the chap who's leading across the other side of the pond, but there's one thing that he's not going to want to have China do something ahead of the US. So hopefully this sort of rhetoric is going to start something that means that more people in those countries and the governments there are going to get on board. And there are larger corporations that are pushing for climate change, and the likes of Microsoft and Amazon, for example, are trying to push to become. I think it was Amazon who are trying to eliminate all of their carbon emissions from inception by 2050, which is a huge undertaking. So it is starting to gather a bit of momentum, and I think it sounds horrendous, but the catalyst of COVID has really accelerated that and allowed us to get where we want to be much quicker. But of course, you know, time will tell. And all smaller businesses as well, everyone has an impact. So if you have 5 employees, for example, well, if you've got 3 million businesses with 5 employees, that is just with everyone pulling in the same direction. That's all very it's all very good stuff that works our way towards that goal. So no matter how small you are, as a business, as long as you're taking steps to go towards carbon neutrality, then you're making a difference.
I guess that sort of comes back to
Lindsay, one of my clients actually, the comment there was, is commercial entities going to drive the change? I think that's completely right. One of my clients, they've just built a UK plant, and what they do, and they have plants elsewhere around the world, they take objects that would otherwise be going to landfill, push it through a process, and what pops out the other end they can use to generate electricity. So actually being able to prove concept elsewhere in Europe, build one in the UK, the countries that were mentioned in the question actually have exactly the same issues as what we have in the UK, and this type of technology could therefore be rolled out elsewhere to help solve those issues. And that will be only one of many technologies that are being driven by the need for innovation.
Yeah. I agree with that entirely. I think you know, unfortunately for me, I'm not the only company that makes buildings more sustainable. There's lots of us out there, and there's that's a massive growth industry in its own right. Electric vehicles, massive growth industry in its own right, and sustainables from power generation through to recycling are huge growth industries. And you know, every political party in the UK is currently talking about a green revolution. You know, we can sit and argue about which one's doing the, you know, has the best policies for that, but that's the conversation. And in the people will, so whether it's politically driven or driven by businesses, I don't think it will change the overall outcome. Countries where the political leadership isn't doing enough still have independent businesses in them that are and their eyes are as open to this as ours, and they will see the commercial opportunity in it, and that will drive the change.
Lovely, thank you all. A question, James Peach, maybe you can start us off on this one. With the end of the Brexit transitional period fast approaching and a deal still to be agreed, and a second COVID spike looking highly likely with increased restrictions being reimposed by the government, is it feasible or even advisable for businesses to be reviewing their business purpose, sustainability, CSR, etc. now, as a short-term focus needs to be on other things? Sorry.
I think you can't dumb down the importance of CSR, purpose, and those other areas. Obviously, Brexit is the top of everyone's radar at the moment, or COVID. But it's going back to some of the points I made, particularly on the CSR side of things. You need to embrace those things. And I think it's probably evident in things I said that you can have an impact on your business going forward. It's not obviously just about your business, it's about the impact you can have on those around you. Okay, you may come from the perspective, you know, you're not interested about other businesses. I'm more interested about my business, making profits, making sure I keep going. There's no denying that's an important decision to make, but I think there's more capability. And it's back to my point about not taking it on yourself as a business leader, but using the team around you, using your colleagues. Get them to, you know, form groupings to look at your CSR programs, to look at your purpose. Because I think if you forget about those things, then it's inevitable that it may have a knock-on impact on your business, regardless of Brexit or COVID, in all honesty.
Yeah. Lovely, thank you. Right, one more, I think. Jake, you may be able to incorporate, if you did have an answer to that, into the next question, because I'm coming to you. I'm going to merge two questions together. So have Kreston Reeves made a commitment to the environment, and where can I find Kreston Reeves' commitment to the UN sustainability goals?
Well, that's fantastic. I think I'll try and answer both questions at the same time. I mean, I'm probably going to let James Peach do that side of it as to what we're aiming for as an organisation. The one other point I wanted to make was around collaboration. I think there are a lot of things going on all at once at the moment, and sure enough, business owners will have their eye on the short-term goals of getting through COVID, Brexit, and all of that, what that entails. But the one thing that we have seen through the last few months is just this amazing way that everyone has come together to battle through and solve problems. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand, benefit from being part of a very vibrant community down here in Brighton, is that every business owner was collaborating with each other to solve these problems. So I think it doesn't matter if you're a big corporation, then you could probably have teams that work on your purpose, your CSR, sustainability goals, etc. But as small business owners, you can still have that collaborative feel with other business owners without giving away your competitive advantage or your edge. So there's different ways of doing things, and I think we've been able to see that through. So I don't think I've completely answered the question, but James, did you want to highlight where we're supporting and where we can find that?
Yeah, I'm pleased the question was raised, actually. I was hoping to touch on briefly what we have done within Kreston Reeves over the last couple of years to support our CSR programme and really to support the UN Sustainable Goals. So we all met as a group, the CSR representatives, earlier on this year. I think we sort of talked about what we've done the last few years from a CSR perspective, and there were so many good things bouncing around. But what we hadn't done well was really sort of join it all together and really share that with our colleagues and contacts. So off the back of that, we have actually produced a CSR impact report for the last financial year. As it stands, that has only been shared internally. However, there is a plan to roll that out externally to share with stakeholders, our contacts, in the next couple of weeks. So anyone on the call here, hopefully you will get sight of that on social media platforms or on our website in due course. It's important to explain again, because CSR crosses on so many areas. The way we framed our CSR impact report was under 4 main sustainable development goals, because although we touch on lots of the 17 goals, there are 4 that resonate particularly with us. I'm not going to go through now in detail in terms of what we've done in those areas, but those main 4 goals are quality education, good health and well-being, reduced inequalities, and obviously climate action. So on the point on climate action, and the other question that was raised about it is what commitment we're making, if anything, towards climate action. I think we want to be ahead of the game basically in terms of what we're doing. We're aware that the point raised earlier about should it be down to the large multinational organisations to take those steps and become carbon neutral. But as you may have seen on the screen there, we've actually made a commitment in the last couple of months to go carbon neutral in the next year. And sometimes that can be a throwaway comment, oh yeah, we're going to become carbon neutral. Are you really going to become carbon neutral? But we will be engaging again with our colleagues to explain how we're going to do it. And just to clarify, we are going to be engaging with a third-party energy consultant to measure and monitor our overall carbon footprint. And using that, we'll be able to then decide how much we need to give back in terms of offsetting, planting of trees, investing in renewable energy programs. And that's something we feel as though we can commit to in the next year. And we're very much looking forward to doing that and obviously doing our part to help with that global drive against the climate emergency. All right, so hopefully that covers that question in detail.
James, and I believe all this information is on our website now as well, isn't it?
To an extent, we haven't actually shared yeah, not the report. The report isn't there, but we do have a designated CSR page on our website, and we do update through our social media platforms of various initiatives on the go. In addition, we also have the KR Foundation, which we set up a couple of years ago, and there's a lot of fundraising, volunteer activity that goes on within there. So lots of positive points from my perspective.
That's great, thank you. I am a bit conscious of time, so if anyone does have any further questions, then we will be able to send you the survey and you can enter the questions on the survey later today. We'd be more than happy to discuss any other questions. Before I go, I would just like to mention our next webinar, which is our 6th and final webinar in our Looking Ahead series, and that will be Looking Ahead, Retaining Agility, Rain or Shine. This will be the 28th of October at 10 AM and covering funding reserves, resilience and contingency planning, crisis planning and management, and the importance of looking for opportunities in crisis. So I hope to see lots of you back for that. I'd like to thank our panellists for presenting. I'd like to thank those who have submitted questions, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. Have a great day.